Picture a girl with braided pigtails inside a Nashville courtroom. She wore an orange jumpsuit. The court called case number 1, 16-year-old Centoya Brown. Everyone present agreed on one fact. This teenager looked like she belonged in a high school homeroom. Instead, she faced trial for murder. The crime itself does not make this image haunt us. The timeline leading up to that exact moment does. 15 years, 2 documentaries, and a national movement finally started answering one critical question. Was Centoya Brown a killer, or did the system completely abandon a child? The truth starts on January 29th, 1988. A teenage mother, already battling severe addiction, delivered Centoya Denise Brown. Her biological mother drank heavily throughout the pregnancy and used crack cocaine during the final months. That detail would later anchor Brown's legal defense. She entered the adoption system before turning 2. Elinette Brown, a teacher, took her in and provided a stable, loving home by all accounts. But what went wrong? When Centoya turned 12, everything shifted. She started running away. She struggled in school. Mood swings crashed in waves. Brief periods of lightness vanished into stretches of deep, inconsolable sadness. The threat started before birth. Forensic psychiatrists concluded fetal alcohol spectrum disorder severely compromised her cognition, impulse control, and emotional regulation. Consequently, she cycled through Tennessee juvenile detention facilities for several years. State records confirm she landed at Nashville's Woodland Hills Youth Development Center following numerous repeat incidents. She broke out of every placement. She always found an escape route until the summer of 2004. Vanishing to wander the dark Nashville streets entirely alone. Who was watching? Gary and McLaughlin was watching. Operating under the street name Cutthroat, this 24-year-old predator quickly locked his sights onto the vulnerable 16-year-old runaway. An apparent romance instantly fractured into a nightmare. We know this from Brown's desiccant testimony and court records. McLaughlin brutally assaulted her. He choked her unconscious, shoved a loaded gun in her face, and forced drug use. He also coerced her into prostitution, violently dispatching her to hustle for cash. She completely lacked a safe harbor. Legally speaking, she represented a textbook child trafficking victim, yet absolutely nobody ever bothered to use that specific label. On August 5, 2004, McLaughlin violently struck her, ordering her out to earn. A 43-year-old Nashville real estate agent named Johnny Allen spotted her. Offering food and $50, he deliberately drove the teenager directly to his home on the city's south side. A 16-year-old walks into a house. She leaves a killer. Brown later stated that Allen's demeanor instantly terrified her inside. Firearms littered the property. He stood over her while she tried sleeping, completely blocking her exit. She later claimed she knew she would never survive the night. Who makes it out alive? Early on August 6th, she grabbed her concealed .40 caliber pistol and fired once. Johnny Allen died on the bedroom floor, right at the scene. Escaping before dawn, she stole his pants, wallet, and 2 firearms. She sprinted back to McGloin at their motel. Did she vanish? Nashville Dispatch answered a 911 call hours later. Patrolmen found Allen dead from a lone bullet to the back of the skull. Detectives located his pickup nearby the next morning. Handcuffs clicked on 16-year-old Centoya Brown. By August 8th, she waived Miranda rights, talking openly with detectives. She confessed the entire narrative to them, detailing how she got solicited. She swore she fired from pure terror, claiming absolute self-defense. The state saw a totally different reality. Prosecutors insisted Allen slept during the shooting, driven by robbery. Was she truly a victim? They branded Centoya Brown a calculating predator, not a victim. A Davidson County, Tennessee courtroom tried her as an adult in 2006. The defense portrayed a trafficked, traumatized child operating on a compromised mental state, genuinely fearing death. Experts testified about her fetal alcohol disorder and severe abuse. She faced impossible circumstances, yet prosecutors hammered the physical clues, the missing wallet, stolen firearms, and reports suggesting a return for more loot proving calculated robbery over self-defense. After deliberating, the jury delivered a crushing verdict, siding firmly with the state. They convicted Centoya Brown of first-degree murder, felony murder, and aggravated robbery. The sentence brought life behind bars, legally denying parole for 51 straight years. She would hit 69 before even requesting release. For years, the case just sat. Then, 2011 arrived. The PBS documentary, Me Facing Life, Centoya's Story, brought major exposure. The film simmered culturally until November 2017, when Rihanna blasted Brown's tragedy on Instagram. Within days, Kim Kardashian, LeBron James, and Snoop Dogg added their massive platforms. Hashtag Free Centoya Brown broke the internet. A viral movement awakened. Foam gathered at his mouth as he broadcast a promise to hunt until police killed him. Authorities missed their earlier chance when a clemency hearing ended with the Tennessee Board of Parole deadlocking in 3 directions, reaching zero consensus. 17 knife wounds usually guarantee silence, but a jammed firing pin left one witness. Long before that terror, the Tennessee Supreme Court ruled in December 2018 that Brown must serve 51 years. The public outrage was overwhelming. Letters buried the governor's desk. Massive rallies were organized. And on January 7, 2019, outgoing Governor Bill Haslam made his decision. He granted Centoya Brown full clemency, citing the horrific brutality of giving a juvenile a life sentence. On August 7, 2019, exactly 15 years after that life-shattering night, she finally walked out of the Deborah K. Johnson Rehabilitation Center completely free. She earned her GED and an associate degree with a perfect 4.0 GPA. By her release, she sat just one course away from a Lipscomb University bachelor's degree, all achieved behind bars. She married musician Jay Long in 2015 while locked inside. Together, they built a nonprofit exclusively dedicated to supporting young human trafficking survivors. Centoya Brown's saga became the ultimate turning point in how Tennessee and the entire nation discusses juvenile justice and child exploitation. Yet, as legally chaotic and fiercely debated as her case was, the next story brings a bloodthirsty killer with absolutely zero ambiguity, a phantom predator who ruthlessly ensured no victims survived to speak, or so he thought. Enter Food Eject number 2, Paul Dennis Reed. He hit Nashville sporting scuffed cowboy boots, a wide-brimmed hat, and tall tales about becoming the next G. Brooks. He boldly introduced himself as Justin Parks. He took guitar lessons, bragged about massive record deals, and smoothly charmed his way into the city's naive network of dreamers. No one looked closer. Reed banked his entire existence on that ignorance. Paul Dennis Reed Jr. was born November 12, 1957, in Richland Hills, Texas. It was a bleak Fort Worth food derb where absolutely nothing was expected and far less was provided. The youngest of 3, his paternal grandmother primarily raised him. He later almost murdered that exact same woman by torching her mattress while she slept. Authorities immediately shipped him to a boys' reformatory. School uncovered severe, completely ignored learning disabilities. By age 16, he roamed alone. By his mid-20s, he boasted a violent rap sheet featuring an armed robbery at a Houston steakhouse, which earned him a 20-year prison bid. Shockingly, he served barely 7 before 1990 parole. Texas foolishly let him walk. He drifted aimlessly for years until September 1995, materializing in Nashville completely reborn as Justin Parks, full-time hustler and aspiring country star. He secured a boarding house, took basic guitar lessons, and snagged a line cook gig at a local diner. But the glorious music career vanished. The coveted gigs never came. The grand illusion that dragged him 1,500 miles from Texas dissolved. Something infinitely darker emerged. By early 1997, Paul Reed scrubbed dishes at a Shone deep in Nashville's Donaldson neighborhood. Drowning in debt, violently antisocial, his temper was a ticking bomb. On February 15, 1997, he snapped during a shift, hurled a heavy plate at a coworker, and got fired instantly. He was officially done trying. He had sworn a dark oath following his Texas conviction. He would never leave a breathing witness again. The very next sunrise, February 16, 1997, Steve Hampton and Sarah Jackson were unlocking Captain D's on Lebanon Road. Hampton was 25, a devoted father of 3, who hustled his way into management starting at age 15. Jackson was just 16, a local high schooler grinding out a part-time shift down the street from her home. Minutes before the morning rush flooded in, a sharp knock rattled the glass front door. A towering man wearing a disarming smile stood waiting outside, firmly gripping what looked like a job application. Hampton unsuspectingly unlocked the deadbolt. The second he did, The smile vanished. Reed brandished a weapon, shoved them both inside the freezing walk-in cooler, demanded they lie face down, and executed them with single shots to the skull. He relentlessly gutted the safe, stealing roughly $7,000. He snatched the surveillance tapes and casually strolled back into the Sunday sunlight. Detectives quickly discovered distinct shoe prints. They secured statements regarding a mysterious guy lurking the prior evening begging for a cooking gig. Investigators incredibly pinpointed Reed as a person of interest using his shown employment file. But a flawed background check cleared his name, and the investigation moved on. 5 agonizing weeks vanished. On the pitch-black evening of March 23rd, Reed lurked behind a McDonald's in the Hermitage neighborhood. He waited just 3.5 miles from Captain D's, watching the exhausted closing crew push through the rear exit. He shoved 4 terrified workers back inside at gunpoint, corralled them into a dark storeroom, drained $3,000, and unleashed hell. Andrea Brown, 17. Ronald Santiago, 27. Robert Sue, 23. All 3 perished instantly. The 4th employee, 22-year-old Jose Gonzalez, survived solely because Reed's gun miraculously jammed. Furious, Reed brutally stabbed Gonzalez 17 distinct times before abandoning his body. Gonzalez played completely dead until the heavy door clicked shut, then crawled to a phone and dialed 911. He lived. He remembered everything. Nashville plunged into absolute bone-chilling panic. The terrified city finally understood a serial killer hunted them. The media crowned him with a nightmare moniker before detectives ever sketched his face: the fast food killer. On April 23rd, Reed silently drove 40 miles north to Clarksville, Tennessee. The doors locked for the night, yet he talked his way right inside the Baskin-Robbins on Wilma Rudolph Boulevard. Angela Holmes was 21. Michelle Mace, 16. Reed grabbed the cash, forced both women into his car, and drove to Dunbar Cave State Park. Searchers found their bodies the following morning. Both died by knife. He changed his method and his city, but his zero-witness rule remained absolute. Who could stop him? Then, on June 1st, 1997, Enan Reed made the fatal mistake that ended everything. He drove to Mitchell Roberts, the Shoney's manager, who fired him and knocked. Coincidentally, Roberts' son was recording a home video. The tape caught what happened. Reed stood outside, pulled a handgun and handcuffs, and demanded Roberts put them on. Roberts slammed the door, barricading his family inside. Nashville police swiftly arrived and placed Reed under arrest. Officers realized the man Roberts described perfectly matched composite sketches from 3 crime scenes. Jose Gonzalez picked Reed from a lineup. Tex matched Baskin-Robbins' fingerprints to Reed. They also recovered Steve Hampton's license, covered in Reed's prints, abandoned on Ellington Parkway. Investigators found biological evidence from the Baskin-Robbins victims inside Reed's car. A gas receipt placed him near Dunbar Cave the night of the murders. How could he escape? He couldn't. The case locked around him. Between April 1999 and May 2000, Paul Dennis Reed faced 3 capital murder trials. Media coverage was so intense that the court imported jurors from East and West Tennessee. Nobody in Middle Tennessee could be expected to remain impartial. At each trial, the defense claimed mental illness and delusions. Reed argued government conspiracies rigged the process. Jurors completely disagreed. They convicted Reed on all 7 counts of first-degree murder. Sentences compounded until Reed accumulated 7 death penalties, the most ever imposed on a single person in Tennessee history. He spent over 15 years on death row, filing and dropping appeals erratically. In 2003, he came within hours of execution before pulling back. Would justice ever arrive? His constant legal maneuvering dragged the process out for years, keeping victims' families trapped in prolonged uncertainty. Ultimately, the state never took Paul Dennis Reed's life. On November 1st, 2013, he died at Nashville General Hospital from pneumonia, heart failure, and respiratory complications. He was 55, 11 days shy of his 56th birthday. The executioner never got the chance. His victims were young, working late shifts, saving for school, raising kids. They were just surviving the week. Their names: Sarah Jackson, Steve Hampton, Andrea Brown, Ronald Santiago, Robert Sue, Angela Holmes, and Michelle Mace. Paul Reed spent years ensuring the world remembered him. Remembering them is the least we can do. But the next case drags us deeper into darkness. This crime wasn't committed by a shadowy drifter. It was a university campus teenager who became the youngest woman ever sentenced to die in America. Who was she? Number 3. Christa Pike. The morning after Colleen Surmer's murder, Christa sat in the Job Corps cafeteria, eating breakfast. She casually pulled something from her jacket pocket and placed it on her tray. She told the person beside her exactly what it was. A bone. A fragment of Colleen's skull. She was 18 and smiling. Christa Gale Pike was born March 10, 1976, in Beckley, West Virginia. Nothing pointed toward stability. Her parents constantly fought, separated, reconciled, and separated again. Her mother drank heavily throughout pregnancy. That detail later surfaced in court as evidence of possible neurological damage. As a toddler, someone found Christa crawling through filth, while her mother lived a chaotic lifestyle that caseworkers documented repeatedly. The word neglect appeared in records before she could read. Sexual abuse entered her story early. Violence wasn't an exception. It was the weather. By her teens, Pike bounced through troubled circumstances until landing at Job Corps. This federally funded program gave at-risk youths vocational training, firm structure, and a second chance. She was sent to the Knoxville, Tennessee Center on Dale Avenue in the mid-90s. On paper, it was the exact intervention needed. In practice, she arrived carrying everything she had always been: volatile, jealous, and magnetic enough to draw followers. At the center, Pike met 17-year-old Tatteril Shipp. They became a couple quickly. Pike attached intensely, since both shared an obsession with the occult and reportedly considered themselves practicing Satanists. Investigators later noted this detail after finding a satanic Bible and a makeshift altar set up directly inside Shipp's room. A fragment of a human skull sat quietly inside a teenager's pocket. To understand how it got there, we have to look at a 19-year-old from Florida named Colleen Slemmer. From day one, she and Christa Pike locked into a bitter, tense dynamic. Pike convinced herself, with absolutely zero evidence, that Slemmer was after her boyfriend Shipp and was trying to tear them apart. On January 11, 1995, Pike looked a classmate named Kim Elo directly in the eye and stated she was going to kill Colleen Slemmer. Her reason? She just felt mean. Ilo did not report it. The very next evening, January 12th, right around 8 o'clock, Elo watched Pike, Shipp, Slemmer, and Shadala Peterson walk out of the dorms towards 17th Street. Would anyone ever see Slemmer alive again? No. Pike had successfully lured Slemmer out with the promise of marijuana and a movie. A cold rain poured over Knoxville as the group walked down the Cumberland Avenue strip, cutting through Tyson Park straight onto the University of Tennessee's agricultural campus. At that hour, that stretch of land was completely abandoned. Once they were far enough away from the safety of the dorms, Pike turned on Slemmer. She accused her of trying to steal Shipp. Slemmer completely denied it, but Pike lunged anyway, launching an attack that did not stop for the next 30 to 60 minutes. What happened next became one of the most deeply disturbing crimes in Tennessee's recorded history. Court records and medical examiner testimony detail wounds so numerous across Slemmer's body that the Knox County forensic pathologist eventually just stopped trying to catalog every single one individually. She explicitly stated she would have needed 3 full days just to document them all. The weapons of choice included a small meat cleaver and a simple box cutter. Slemmer desperately tried to run multiple times. Every single time, she was chased down, and the relentless assault continued. Near the very end, Pike hoisted a massive piece of asphalt and slammed it into Slemmer's skull, fracturing it fatally. As Slemmer lay dying in the dirt at the base of a tree, Pike bent down, removed a loose fragment of her victim's skull, and kept it in her pocket. Peterson, who stood watch during the entire attack, left alongside Pike and Shipp, who would find the aftermath. The following morning, 2 University of Tennessee groundskeepers discovered Colleen Slemmer's body. The damage was so extensive they initially could not even determine they were looking at a human being. The investigation moved incredibly fast. Police quickly noticed that 4 students signed out of the Job Corps dormitories that night, yet only 3 returned. Within 36 hours, Pike, Shipp, and Peterson were all sitting in police custody. When investigators tossed Shipp's room, they uncovered a stash of satanic materials. When they searched Pike's belongings, they found the ultimate prize, the missing skull fragment. That very same night, Pike actually went to Ilo's room, the exact friend she warned 24 hours earlier, and described what happened in vivid detail. By multiple accounts, she was perfectly cheerful. Investigators also recovered two of Slemmer's identification cards from a nearby Texaco station, right alongside a pair of black gloves Pike used. The evidence was totally overwhelming. And then Pike handed over a full confession. Would it save her life? Not quite. At trial in March 1996, the prosecution laid out that confession alongside the physical evidence. They backed it up with testimony from multiple witnesses and the medical examiner's findings. The defense centered entirely on mental illness, arguing Pike suffered from borderline personality disorder. They claimed she completely lost control, arguing her deeply traumatic childhood should heavily factor into any sentence. The jury deliberated for only a few short hours. On March 22, 1996, Christa Pike was found guilty of first-degree murder and conspiracy to commit murder. 8 days later, on March 30th, the sentence came down, death by electrocution, plus an extra 25 years for the conspiracy charge. At just 18 years old, she became the youngest woman in the United States to be sentenced to death in the post-Furman era. That marks the modern period of capital punishment following the Supreme Court's 1972 reinstatement of the death penalty. Taddarrell Shipp faced trial separately in 1997, but because he was only 17 at the time of the murder, things changed. Being exactly 1 year younger than Pike made him ineligible for the death penalty under federal law. He received a life sentence with the possibility of parole, plus 25 consecutive years for conspiracy. He was denied parole in October 2025, with his next case deferred all the way until 2031. Shadala Peterson, who cooperated heavily with prosecutors, received probation. But what about Pike? Pike stayed put. She has spent nearly 3 decades on death row at the Tennessee Prison for Women, and her legal journey has been relentless. She launched appeals, withdrew them, relaunched them, and fought her sentence through every single available channel. In 2012, she even attempted to manipulate a civilian visitor into helping her escape. That resulted in an additional 25-year sentence for solicitation of murder and attempted escape. Courts have repeatedly rejected her claims of ineffective counsel, unconstitutional sentencing, and medical concerns about the execution method. In January 2025, she filed a suit arguing that lethal injection would violate her rights due to a medical condition she claims causes excessive blood clotting. That lawsuit remains pending right now. In October 2025, the Tennessee Supreme Court set a firm execution date, September 30th, 2026. If it proceeds, Christa Pike will be the very first woman executed in Tennessee since 1819, more than 200 years ago. Colleen Slemmer's mother, May Martinez, has spent 3 decades fighting to have her daughter's remains returned, and her killer finally brought to justice. We begin with an unsettling missing piece. Authorities recovered almost everything from that scene. Yet as we record this, one extracted bone fragment, the piece Pike remains entirely unaccounted for. Execute her, Martinez demanded, or return the rest of Cholene to me. We leave that chilling investigation behind. Our next story drags us from a bright university campus straight into Nashville's elite legal circle, where a powerful attorney made his wife vanish. Nate spent almost 10 years dodging reality. Case number 4 spotlights Perry March. The letter arrived, typed. Janet's mother spotted that bizarre formatting immediately. It instantly triggered her deepest maternal instinct. Something felt wrong. Janet March exclusively hand-wrote every single message. She strictly avoided uppercase letters. She meticulously stamped a date across the top of every single page. Perry March handed detectives a clean, printed document titled Janet's 12-Day Vacation. It ignored every single one of her personal writing habits. The paper looked polished, cold, and flawless. The man who had just vanished his own wife almost certainly drafted it himself. Perry Aram March entered this world designed to impress. He spoke flawlessly, harbored massive ambition, and navigated exclusive rooms effortlessly. He started with very little money. He leveraged pure grit and raw intellect to claw his way straight to the top of Nashville high society. His path collided with Janet Levine while they both attended the University of Michigan. She came from serious money. Her father, Lawrence Levine, dominated Nashville law. She possessed a generous artistic soul and maintained intensely loyal, wide-reaching friendships. She eventually asked Perry to marry. The couple tied the knot in June 1987. They relocated to Nashville. Perry entered Vanderbilt University School of Law, constructing what looked like an absolute dream. Perry tackled corporate and tax law. Janet created artwork for children's books. Nay created custom furniture while raising two little kids, Samson and Sephora, inside a freshly upgraded home, tucked within the wealthy Forest Hills area. What lurked beneath that perfect facade? The marriage was secretly crumbling. Official records show Janet secretly booked a consultation with a divorce lawyer during the summer of 1996. She scheduled that crucial meeting for August 16, 1996. She never made it. Contractors wrapped up their remodeling project at the Forest Hills house on August 15, 1996. Both workers observed Janet completely alive and perfectly fine as they exited the property. Those two builders represent the final non-family members to ever lay eyes on her again. No courtroom ever firmly established the exact sequence of subsequent events. How did it end? Perry March's own father eventually testified under oath that his son murdered Janet that exact night. Perry dialed Janet's parents, Lawrence and Carolyn Levine, right near midnight. He claimed his wife packed 3 bags, grabbed $5,000 cash, took her own passport, and bolted on a spontaneous getaway due to relationship struggles. The Levines felt disoriented but avoided instant panic. Janet occasionally acted on impulse. Then August 25th hit. Janet missed her son Sammy's 6th birthday party without calling even once. Panic finally hit. Perry delayed filing a missing person report until August 29th, stalling 2 entire weeks after Janet initially vanished. The resulting probe uncovered massive red flags almost instantly. Janet's credit cards registered 0 activity. She phoned no friends, booked 0 hotel rooms, and left absolutely no digital footprint. Police ultimately located her 1996 Volvo, dumped at a local apartment complex. She never drove it on a road trip. Someone parked it there. They left her passport sitting inside. Someone deliberately arranged her sandals perfectly neat right by the front bumper. A witness named Ellen Neighbor approached detectives with a stunning detail. He watched a man rolling a bicycle near that exact lot around 1:30 that fateful morning. He claimed the mysterious figure made direct eye contact. He confirmed the man was undeniably Perry March. Perry immediately swapped out the tires on Janet's recovered vehicle. He convinced the auto shop the old ones looked bald. Mechanics later informed detectives those original tires remained in flawless condition. When employees questioned the swap, Perry dismissively claimed he just preferred a completely different brand. Nashville authorities declared the investigation an official homicide case. Perry instantly shut down all cooperation. He skipped every single memorial service for Janet. 1 month after she disappeared, he loaded up their kids and fled to Chicago. Come 1999, he moved away to the Mexican lakeside community of Ajig, where he and his father Arthur built a cozy expatriate life. Perry even launched a tiny restaurant down there with his brand new wife. The Levines refused to quit. They waged war against Perry across courtrooms for almost 10 years, fighting over grandchild custody, wrongful death claims, and Janet's massive estate. A Davidson County civil judge ruled Perry legally responsible for Janet's demise in mid-2004. Later that year, prosecutors called 59 witnesses in one blistering day. A Davidson County grand jury issued a sealed indictment. They slapped Perry March with second-degree murder, evidence tampering, and abuse of a human corpse. That indictment stayed buried for months. Meanwhile, FBI operatives and U.S. immigration authorities hammered out high-level extradition deals with Mexico. Morning broke on August 3, 2005. Perry March settled in for a quiet breakfast at his own Ajig restaurant. A tactical squad of armed men swarmed the building and arrested him. He sat plotting 2 more murders. Authorities extradited him through a California detention facility, then transferred him to Nashville. Aboard that flight back to Tennessee, he looked cold case detective Pat Postiglione in the eye and spoke. He delivered this exact quote, unprompted. Prior to the Janet incident, I have not been involved in any other criminal type activity. A guilty conscience always shows. What unfolded next left veteran investigators completely speechless. While Perry waited for trial inside Davidson County Jail, he actively recruited a fellow inmate named Russell Ferris to execute a double murder. The targets? Lawrence and Carolyn Levine, his in-laws. Perry promised to cover Ferris's bond. Ferris flipped and called his attorney, who immediately alerted police. Detectives promptly planted recording devices inside the jailhouse. Audio captured Perry eagerly telling Ferris he simply could not express his immense excitement over the hit. Detectives then recorded Perry dialing his father, Arthur March, down in Mexico to feed him strict instructions. The conspiracy deepened. An FBI agent ultimately intercepted Arthur at the Guadalajara airport, stopping him moments before he met a hitman whom Mexican immigration authorities had already detained. Prosecutors promptly charged both Perry and Arthur with solicitation and conspiracy to commit murder. Facing severe extradition pressure, Arthur folded and agreed to cooperate with prosecutors for a lighter sentence. During a pretrial deposition, the father finally confirmed Perry murdered Janet on the night of August 15, 1996. He confessed he personally helped his son move her body, stuffing it inside a garbage bag, before driving up to Kentucky for disposal. However, he claimed he forgot the exact location. Authorities never recovered Janet March's remains. When trial kicked off in August 2006, the judge bussed in a Chattanooga jury. Constant Nashville media saturation made local selection impossible. Prosecutors built their case heavily on circumstantial evidence and witness statements, playing Arthur March's entire video deposition for the court. They also played the jailhouse tapes and brought in a Mexican attorney who recalled a 2001 business dispute. The lawyer testified Perry explicitly threatened to eliminate adversaries the exact same way he disposed of his wife. Defense attorneys attacked everyone's credibility, but after a week of testimony, the jury handed down guilty verdicts across the entire board: second-degree murder, evidence tampering, and abuse of a corpse. The judge sentenced Perry March to 56 years behind bars. The gavel fell exactly 10 years and 2 days after Janet vanished. Arthur March took a federal plea deal and caught a 5-year sentence for his role. He died in federal lockup. Perry March remains incarcerated today inside an undisclosed location. Meanwhile, Janet March still waits out there somewhere, completely unfound and unreturned, to a family that never quit searching. Someone robbed Janet of everything: her life, her children, and her burial. Did the nightmare end there? Absolutely not. We shift to a completely different disappearance. A predator snatched a young woman straight from her front yard in broad daylight, shattering a rural Tennessee community forever. Number 5. Holly Bobo. Her alarm buzzed at 4:30 in the morning for an early lecture. She was 20 years old, grinding through her second year of nursing school at the University of Tennessee at Martin. Friends and family painted a consistent picture. She was shy, fiercely devoted, and kind. She possessed a genuine drive to heal people. That morning, she ate breakfast, gathered her things, and walked out the door. Her car sat right there, but she never reached it. Holly Lynn Bobo grew up in Darden, a tiny rural speck in Decatur County, Tennessee. You know, the place folks leave their doors wide open and greet every neighbor by name. Dana and Karen Bobo raised Holly and her older brother Clint inside a humble house framed by deep woods and farmland. It represents the kind of quiet Tennessee landscape stretching miles without a single stoplight. Loved ones described her as a gentle soul who kept a tight inner circle but loved them fiercely. She even shared bloodlines with country music singer Whitney Duncan. She had serious plans. As a second-year nursing student, she saw her entire future mapped out perfectly right in front of her. April 13th, 2011, kicked off like any ordinary Wednesday in Darden. Karen Bobo hit the road early for her teaching job. She managed a 4th-grade classroom at the local elementary school. Holly finished getting ready for her own classes. Clint, who was 25 and studying social work, hung back at the house that fateful morning. Right around 7:30, Karen's phone rang at work with a frantic neighbor, claiming she heard a blood-curdling scream echoing from the Bobo property. Karen instantly dialed Clint. He rushed outside and scanned the tree line, witnessing a chilling sight that haunts him to this very day. He locked eyes on his younger sister, walking toward the deep woods with an unidentified man dressed head to toe in camouflage gear. Clint later told police Holly did not appear distressed. Still, a sudden icy dread settled into his stomach, screaming that something was terribly wrong. Assuming the stranger might just be her boyfriend, he turned around and went back inside. Seconds later, his brain caught up with his gut, and he sprinted back out. Holly had vanished. The camouflage man disappeared. Only the empty woods remained. A single bullet to the skull. 3 years hidden deep inside the unforgiving woods. But first, Holly Bobo simply vanished. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation instantly launched the most expensive, exhaustive manhunt their agency ever managed. Hundreds of volunteers scoured the muddy fields, timberlands, and logging roads across Decatur County. Army helicopters buzzed the terrain. Cadaver dog teams hit the ground. Detectives chased every single thread. But Holly was a ghost. Days dragged into weeks. Weeks dissolved into months. Early in the investigation, detectives circled several locals, specifically brothers Zachary and Dylan Adams, alongside known associates Shane Austin and Jason Autry, all living in that rural West Tennessee pocket. They grilled everybody. Yet, at that time, all four men produced seemingly airtight alibis. Investigators heavily scrutinized Terry Britt, a convicted sex offender living near the Bobo property. They raided his vehicles and land. Zero physical evidence connected him. The trail froze. Who took her? That terrifying mystery lingered until 2013, when officers busted Dylan Adams on a completely unrelated weapons charge. Inside that interrogation room, the dynamics suddenly fractured. Dylan confessed to detectives that he visited his brother Zachary's house on April 13th, 2011, to grab his truck, and saw Holly Bobo right there, alive. That single bombshell broke the case wide open. By March 2014, nearly 3 years after Holly vanished, a Decatur County grand jury indicted Zachary Adams for especially aggravated kidnapping and first-degree felony murder. Jason Autry caught an indictment shortly after. Then came September 7th, 2014. Two local guys were hunting wild ginseng in the northern Decatur County woods, roughly 20 miles from the Bobo house, when they stumbled onto a nightmare: human bones. The next day, the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation verified they belonged to Holly Bobo. A single bullet fired into the back of her skull ended her life. She lay abandoned out there for over 3 years. 5 months later, in February 2015, Shane Austin, another suspect, swept up in the dragnet, who originally fed prosecutors inside information before authorities claimed he stopped telling the truth, turned up dead in a Florida hotel room from an apparent suicide. Prosecutors had just yanked his immunity deal. He never faced trial. Why? We found out when Zachary Adams faced trial in September 2017, 6 years after Holly disappeared. The judge shipped the proceedings to Hardin County, ruling that seating an impartial jury near the actual crime scene was absolutely impossible. The courtroom war waged for 11 emotionally blistering days. The state anchored its entire case on their star witness, Jason Autry. Autry testified vividly about helping Adams dump what he assumed was a dead body, rolled tightly inside a blanket in a pickup truck bed, driving it toward the Tennessee River near an Interstate 40 bridge. Suddenly realizing Holly was still breathing, Autry testified that Adams pulled the trigger. Other witnesses repeated deeply disturbing statements Adams supposedly bragged about after Holly's disappearance to a friend, to a former girlfriend, and to inmates inside his cell block. Then Karen Bobo took the stand. When asked to hold her daughter's belongings, she physically collapsed. The entire courtroom went dead silent. Defense attorneys attacked Autry as a desperate, unreliable felon, spinning fabrications to save himself, hammering the fact that zero DNA linked Adams to Holly. They argued the case rested entirely on the word of a man with every reason to lie. Who would the jury believe? On September 22, 2017, they delivered their answer. The jury returned a sweeping verdict: guilty on all counts: first-degree murder, especially aggravated kidnapping, and aggravated rape. Zachary Adams caught life in prison without parole, plus a stacked 50 years for the horrifying kidnapping and rape convictions. His brother Dylan swallowed an Alford plea in January 2018, formally acknowledging the state held enough evidence to convict him without admitting direct guilt, pulling a 35-year sentence. Jason Autry scored an 8-year deal and walked free in 2020, but the justice system wasn't finished. Years later, Autry completely recanted his entire trial testimony, swearing he fabricated the most damning details under pressure from his lawyer, who warned a guilty conviction was practically certain. Did they lock up the wrong man? That explosive question hit the courts in January 2024, when Zachary Adams demanded a brand new trial based on this exact recantation. A massive evidentiary hearing dragged through 2025, fiercely scrutinizing the changing stories, evaluating witness credibility, and digging into raw potential evidence ignored during the original trial. Stepping into early 2026, the legal world still awaits a final ruling. Whether Zachary Adams wins a fresh trial or stays locked in a cage, one brutal truth remains. Holly Bobo walked out of her house on a peaceful April morning and never came back. Her cousin Whitney Duncan penned a heartbreaking tribute song for her. Her parents endured a grueling decade of court dates and hearings, until somewhere deep inside those Decatur County woods, they finally brought her home. We now leave a quiet rural community shattered by a vanishing, pivoting to a midnight slaughter inside a Nashville Waffle House. This next nightmare features a practically naked gunman, 4 innocent people who just wanted breakfast, and one incredibly brave young man who charged straight toward the danger while everyone at Doe ran away. Number 6. Travis Reinking. Just past 3 in the morning. He had no idea he was driving into a massacre. James Shaw Jr. pulled into the Waffle House lot on Murraysboro Pike in Antioch, Tennessee. He and a buddy wanted late-night food. Walking toward the doors, Shaw spotted something weird. A guy sitting completely alone inside a dark, tan Chevy pickup. He wasn't moving. Years later, he told a courtroom, "The energy wasn't right. I could just feel it." They walked inside anyway. Within minutes, James Shaw Jr. faced a brutal choice: die in that diner or become one of Nashville's most celebrated strangers. Travis Reinking was born in 1989, raised in Morton, a tiny central Illinois town. On paper, he seemed totally normal. Stable family, steady employment, no violent criminal record. He ran cranes for a living, building a solid reputation on local construction sites. But approaching 2018, his inner circle noticed something terrifying. His mind started to deeply fracture. He claimed stalkers tracked him. He believed hackers hijacked his computer, phone, and identity. He drafted letters, sending one to Taylor Swift and another to Oprah Winfrey, detailing massive conspiracies targeting him. In July 2017, he trespassed near the White House, refusing to leave. He told Secret Service agents he belonged to the Taylor Swift Nation and demanded the president. He was arrested. Authorities committed and evaluated him. Illinois State Police stripped his firearm owner identification card and seized 4 weapons, including an AR-15. But a fatal loophole existed in the system. State law required Reinking to surrender those guns to anyone carrying valid identification. So he handed them straight to his father, Jeffrey Rankin King. Despite witnessing his son's mental collapse, Jeffrey returned every single weapon to Travis less than a year later. By early 2018, he had his guns back. Right before April 22nd, Reinking's delusions accelerated past anything his family or neighbors ever witnessed. He swore intruders broke into his apartment, assaulting him while he slept. He thought CIA agents tracked him. He stole a BMW from a Brentwood dealership. Police recovered and towed it the day before the shooting. Trial testimony showed Reinking later admitted to a psychologist that towing the BMW was his ultimate breaking point. He viewed confiscating his vehicle as an absolute punishment he refused to tolerate. He wrote, "This time, I would have to take something they couldn't take back." That same night, he drove to a Nashville armory, buying 3 30-round magazines for his AR-15. Just past 3 o'clock on the morning of April 22nd, 2018, he parked his truck in the Antioch Waffle House lot. He wore nothing except a green jacket. He sat inside that cab for roughly 4 minutes. Then he stepped outside. The next 42 seconds changed everything. Reinking opened fire outside, striking 29-year-old Torian Sanderlin and 20-year-old Joe Perez Jr. before either could react. He walked right up to the restaurant. The massive plate glass windows shattered inward. Customers frantically dove under tables and ran toward the kitchen, pressing flat against the floor. A young woman named Kayla Shaw simply played dead by the entrance as a bullet grazed past, close enough to wound her. Inside, Reinking kept pulling the trigger. He shot 23-year-old Aquila Dilva, an MTSU music engineering student who had just walked in with his girlfriend and brother. Paramedics rushed Dilva to Vanderbilt University Medical Center, where he tragically died. Gunfire also struck 21-year-old Debbie Groves, a Belmont University senior majoring in social work. She was out celebrating with friends. She died right at the scene. He discharged his weapon 30 total times. 15 rounds outside, 15 inside. His jacket still held 60 unused rounds. That's exactly when James Shaw Jr. moved. Shaw had sprinted down the bathroom corridor near the entrance when the shooting began, a stray bullet grazing his elbow. He stayed, crouched there, watching, calculating every angle. When he saw Reinking lower the rifle, maybe to reload, maybe clearing a jam, something locked into place. He later told the courtroom, "There was a voice that told me to do it, and do it now." Shaw launched himself. He grabbed the AR-15's barrel barehanded, severely burning his palms on the scorching hot metal. He yanked with everything he had. The two men fiercely struggled. Shaw ripped the weapon free, hurling it over the counter. Then he physically shoved Travis Reinking right out the front doors. Reinking fled on foot into the pitch-black night, completely naked. He lost the jacket during the struggle. Now he was gone. Police arrived within minutes. 4 people were already dead. 4 more were heavily injured, and the shooter had vanished into Food Urban, Nashville, carrying absolutely nothing. The Tennessee Bureau of Investigation immediately slapped his name onto their most wanted list. A 34-hour manhunt followed, broadcasting warnings that Reinking carried 2 additional weapons and remained extremely dangerous. On April 23rd, the net finally closed. He was fully dressed. The fugitive finally slipped up. Barra construction workers spotted him entering a wooded area near the Waffle House the day after the shooting. Police swarmed the specific location, immediately taking Travis Reinking into custody. His backpack contained water, sunscreen, a pistol, extra ammunition, a Bible, and several silver bars. He immediately demanded an attorney. A competency evaluation declared Reinking unfit for trial due to severe schizophrenia, locking him inside a psychiatric facility for treatment. A judge deemed him restored to competency by October 2018. Prosecutors dropped a bombshell in January 2020. No death penalty. His trial officially began January 31st, 2022, nearly 4 years post-shooting. Reinking pleaded not guilty by reason of insanity. Defense psychologists testified Reinking suffered a severe schizophrenic break, genuinely believing God commanded his violent actions. Prosecutors methodically countered, highlighting how Reinking bought extra ammunition in the days before the massacre, drove deliberately to a specific target, chose pre-dawn hours to ensure a smaller crowd, and demanded an attorney upon arrest. Does an insane man cover his tracks? They argued these choices demonstrated a killer who perfectly understood his mission. Jurors deliberated, returning on February 4th, 2022, guilty on all 16 counts, including 4 premeditated first-degree murder charges. The insanity gamble collapsed. During sentencing, James Shaw Jr. brought his 8-year-old daughter into court, standing directly before Travis Reinking. Pointing to the girl, he told the killer he almost didn't make it home to raise his child because of Reinking. He told the courtroom he saw Debbie Groves staring back from his daughter's face. Judge Mark Fishburne hammered Reinking with multiple consecutive life sentences without the possibility of parole. He stacked each murder back to back. The public crowned James Shaw Jr. a hero, but he hated the title. Claiming he acted purely out of selfish survival, he still raised over $100,000 for the victims' families shortly after. Chadwick Boseman handed him the BET Hero Award on live television in 2018, deflecting his own spotlight to honor the real hero. But what about Jeffrey Reinking, Travis's father? The man who returned the guns faced justice. A jury convicted him in May 2022 of unlawfully delivering a firearm, giving him 18 months in prison. The 4 innocent people killed that night were Torian Sanderland, Joe Perez, Jr., Aquila Dilva, and Ebony Groves. Ranging from 20 to 29 years old, they were just out eating breakfast, living their lives. They never knew Travis Reinking. They held zero connection to the twisted war inside his head. That reality turns that Murrysboro Pike parking lot into pure nightmare fuel. The horror stems not just from the carnage, but from how incredibly random and preventable it truly was. A preventable tragedy leaves scars, but what happens when a killer broadcasts his crimes? The next case shifts from a chaotic pre-dawn shooting to something arguably more disturbing. A man live-streamed his Memphis killing spree in broad daylight as thousands watched in real time. Number 7, Ezekiel Kelly. The dinner party started completely casual. Friends gathered at a house in the Raleigh neighborhood of Memphis, eating chicken from a food truck business a buddy was building. 19-year-old Ezekiel Kelly sat with them. Witnesses later informed police that Kelly muttered an offhand comment about murdering someone. He said, "Watch this. Nobody moved an inch. Nobody left." People brush off remarks like that until the moment passes, and you realize it was never a joke, it was a lethal warning. Ezekiel Kelly was born October 14th, 2002. Yeah, he grew up in the Raleigh neighborhood on the north side of Memphis. Youth advocates described a community offering zero structure or legitimate opportunity for the kids growing up there. He abandoned school early, burning through his adolescence, revolving through the juvenile justice system. By age 17, his exposure to violence became both chronic and formative. Authorities charged him as an adult in February 2020 with criminal attempted first-degree murder and reckless endangerment. They added using a firearm to commit a dangerous felony after a Memphis shooting left 2 people wounded. Those heavy charges carried enough weight to lock him away for years. Kelly beat the system, negotiating a plea for reduced aggravated assault. In April 2021, a judge sentenced him to 3 years in prison. He served 11 months. Factoring time already served awaiting trial, the state released Ezekiel Kelly on March 16, 2022. He walked out at 19 years old, stepping back onto Memphis streets, carrying everything that brought him to that plea agreement originally. Less than 6 months later, he forced the entire country to watch him snap. Kelly showed up to that Raleigh gathering late at night on September 6th, bleeding into the early morning of September 7th, 2022. At approximately 12:56 in the morning, he pulled 24-year-old Dwayne Tonstal aside from the group. Tonstal was a young father. Loved ones described him as a guy who constantly pushed friends towards something better. This failure cost a man his future. The target had musical ambitions and a growing food truck business before taking a fatal bullet to the head in his driveway while 3 bystanders watched. They instantly picked Kelly from a photo lineup, yet the shooter accelerated into the pitch-black Memphis morning and vanished. How do you catch a ghost? For 16 hours, Memphis warped into a reality unprecedented in American history. A live-action murder investigation played out vividly across full-color mobile screens, entirely documented by the killer himself. The violence exploded at 4:38 that afternoon. 62-year-old Richard Clark sat parked at a South Parkway East gas station. Security cameras recorded the impending execution with absolute clarity. A gray sedan rolled up beside Clark, dropped its windows, and unleashed multiple bullets through the driver door glass. Paramedics pronounced Clark dead on scene. The shooter sped off. Barely 2 minutes later, a woman took a bullet to the leg near Norris Road and Interstate 240. She was sitting inside her vehicle while her dad changed a flat tire when Kelly pulled up. The driver asked for directions to Whitehaven, waited for her response, and immediately opened fire. She survived. But who was hunting these people? Driving east down Norris Road, Ezekiel Kelly launched a Facebook Live broadcast. Thousands watched the terror unfold live before moderators pulled the feed. Kelly delivered a chaotic monologue claiming hitman status, freely admitting he murdered Tonstal, taunting him by name, and bragging about being high. He then outlined his absolute intention to keep slaughtering citizens until law enforcement killed him in a final shootout. He drove between strike zones, offering play-by-play commentary of his rampage with visible foam at his lips. At 5:50 p.m., he swerved into a Jackson Avenue AutoZone, stepped inside, and blasted a customer in the chest while recording. He strutted back outside, screaming about what he just did. Then the screen went black. Where would he strike next? By 6 o'clock, Memphis finally secured the crucial tip it needed. Kelly's own sister and mother called police, reporting they watched him threatening citizens on Facebook Live. An immediate shelter-in-place mandate blanketed Memphis. The Memphis Area Transit Authority abruptly canceled all bus and trolley service. The University of Memphis locked its gates. Down at AutoZone Park, authorities evacuated thousands mid-game while the minor league Memphis Redbirds halted play. The entire city paralyzed itself in lockdown, but the hunter remained on the prowl. Evening fell. At 7:21, Kelly approached a gray Toyota SUV idling in Poplar Avenue traffic near North Evergreen. 38-year-old Allison Parker sat inside. She raised 3 children and worked as a medical assistant at a clinic just across the state line in West Memphis, Arkansas. Her daughter sat in the car and desperately tried exiting to help her mother survive. Kelly breached the passenger door and shot Allison Parker. She died. He hijacked her SUV and fled west down Poplar Avenue. During the chaos, He shot another man's arm and fired through the pants leg of a bystander. He kept moving. The fugitive crossed into South Haven, Mississippi, executing yet another armed carjacking. This time, he spared the driver. Memphis police finally spotted his stolen Dodge Challenger on Interstate 55, sparking a massive high-speed chase. The pursuit ended when Kelly crashed the vehicle, allowing officers to take him into custody without further violence. Detectives recovered 2 firearms from the car. The rampage spanned 7 shooting locations and at least 2 carjackings. He terrorized multiple neighborhoods across more than one state, initiating the violence before 1 a.m. and concluding just before 9 at night. Kelly personally stole 3 lives: Dwayne Tontol, Richard Clark, and Allison Parker. 3 more sustained gunshot wounds. Investigators later determined a 4th casualty, a young woman initially presumed to be Kelly's victim, actually died by a different killer that same day. It was an entirely separate, unrelated fatal tragedy unfolding simultaneously in the exact same city. When the smoke cleared, the community erupted. Memphis Mayor Jim Strickland faced the press, aggressively pounding the podium. He declared that if Mr. Kelly had served his full 3-year prison stint, he would still be locked up today, and 8 in 4 of our fellow citizens would still be alive. The newly inaugurated Shelby County District Attorney stood beside him, demanding a comprehensive overhaul of criminal justice and rehabilitation. Their interaction felt deeply raw and entirely public, perfectly illustrating the exact fault line this case cracked open. What does true accountability look like, and who takes the blame when the system fails? In March 2023, prosecutors announced they would pursue capital punishment if a jury convicted Kelly at trial. Will he face the needle? The defense successfully delayed the trial multiple times, citing the extraordinary scope of the case. They faced 7 crime scenes, 3 homicides, and nearly 400 potential witnesses. Then, on August 13, 2025, Ezekiel Kelly walked into a Memphis courtroom, took the stand, and pleaded guilty to 28 charges. The gavel dropped on 3 murder counts. Judge James Jones Jr. delivered a fate worse than execution: 3 consecutive life sentences without parole, plus 221 years. Attorneys finalized the deal after every victim's family approved. Prosecutors removed the death penalty. Kelly faced the judge, weeping. Wiping his eyes, he admitted having nothing to offer grieving families. He blamed inhabiting his life's darkest place that violent afternoon. His lawyer revealed a colder truth. 22-year-old Kelly preferred prison over the state burying him. Who died? Dwayne Tontol chased music. 62-year-old Richard Clark needed gas. Allison Parker drove home to her kids. Ezekiel Kelly lacked any connection to them. Now they are gone. This nightmare rocked Memphis during a week that already shattered the city. Someone snatched a teacher mid-jog. Fall 2022 left locals questioning how their community fractured. We examined that teacher's story, Eliza Fletcher's abduction, and her monster. Her abduction marks our final case. It stands among the most chilling horrors Memphis ever witnessed. What went wrong? Number 8, Eliza Fletcher. She did everything right. She mapped her route and laced her shoes in pitch darkness. She stepped outside before the city awoke, keeping her exact daily routine. Dedicated runners carve out miles before dawn. The clock hit 4 o'clock, September 2nd, 2022. Eliza Fletcher possessed zero reason to suspect this morning would differ from countless runs near the University of Memphis. At 34, she balanced life as a devoted wife and mother. Parents described the kindergarten teacher with a rare warmth taking decades to earn. Everyone found her deeply authentic. She ran alone through shadows when a monster decided to end her life. A prominent Memphis family welcomed Eliza into the world years earlier. Her grandfather, billionaire Joseph Hyde, founded AutoZone and built a massive national retail chain. Boundless wealth surrounded her childhood, but friends swore privilege never dictated how she treated others. She attended St. Mary's Episcopal School, returning there to teach kindergarten. Shaping young minds fueled her purpose. She married Richie Fletcher, raising 2 amazing sons. Deep religious faith anchored her existence. Church, school, and neighborhood circles used identical words describing her: kind, radiant, present. She made individuals feel seen. She logged pre-dawn miles to beat the heat and capture quiet streets. That stretch near the University of Memphis campus felt completely routine. But that September 2nd morning, digital eyes caught something terrifying. Surveillance recorded a lethal threat rushing up behind her. Who was watching? A predator watched before attacking. Christa Abston hit 40 in September 2022. His dark criminal record traced back to when courts barely considered him an adult. In 2000, 16-year-old Abston leveled a gun at a prominent Memphis attorney, taking him captive. A judge locked him in state prison for 20 years. Authorities released him in 2020. By September 2021, barely a year out, he struck again. Official records proved he orchestrated another brutal assault. He kidnapped and viciously attacked Alicia Franklin using a dating app. She survived to confidently testify against him. Medical staff collected Franklin's rape kit in 2021. It sat gathering dust in an endless backlog. Detectives failed linking that DNA to Abston until police handcuffed him for taking Eliza. This oversight ignited massive public outrage over delayed Memphis forensic testing. How many brutal attacks could rapid results prevent? Minutes before 4 o'clock on September 2, 2022, the timeline turned lethal. Video footage captured Christa Abston actively hunting Eliza Fletcher on foot near campus. A violent struggle broke out. He forcefully shoved her into a relative's black SUV. The vehicle idled 4 agonizing minutes before speeding off. When Eliza missed returning home, her husband dialed police. Hours ticked by until a passing cyclist discovered her smashed cell phone. Mysterious sandals sat near her vanishing point. Investigators swarmed the scene with laser focus. Forensic technicians processed those discarded sandals. Under 24 hours after the abduction, a DNA match hit. The database kicked back an undeniable profile belonging to Christa Abston. The system already knew him from his violent past. Law enforcement pinpointed the black SUV outside his address that afternoon. He tried sprinting away, but officers swiftly secured him in handcuffs. Less than 36 hours after Eliza Fletcher vanished, police already had her abductor in handcuffs. But the cell held a suspect, not a survivor. A terrified Memphis held its collective breath for 3 agonizing days. Thousands tracked every real-time update across local news and social media feeds. On September 5th, detectives discovered her remains behind an abandoned South Memphis duplex, barely 20 minutes from the SUV. Autopsy records confirmed a fatal gunshot to the back of the head, alongside severe leg trauma and jaw fractures. She did not pass quickly or painlessly. The medical examiner logged physical findings that pushed this case into absolute darkness. Memphis residents were reeling from Ezekiel Kelly's shooting spree that identical week, forcing the city to absorb double the trauma. This collision of violence in September 2022 forged a deep civic grief that local leaders had never previously endured. Communities lit candles. Runners launched pre-dawn memorial routes for Eliza, forging a tradition that repeats every anniversary. But where was the justice? It began with Christa Abston facing a first-degree murder charge. Authorities added especially aggravated kidnapping, evidence tampering, and illegal firearm possession. Prosecutors immediately threatened the death penalty for a trial conviction. Yet Abston first faced a separate 2021 Franklin assault case. In April 2024, jurors convicted him of aggravated rape. They tacked on aggravated kidnapping and weapons offenses. By May 2024, he caught 80 years. The judge stacked 40 for rape, 20 for kidnapping, and 20 for the gun, all consecutively. The Fletcher trial loomed on February 10, 2025. Then, on October 28, 2024, Abston pivoted. He pleaded guilty to first-degree murder, especially aggravated kidnapping, and evidence tampering regarding Eliza's death. Shelby County Judge James Jones, Jr. handed down life without the possibility of parole for homicide, adding 40 concurrent kidnapping years and stacking it entirely atop the 80-year Franklin sentence. State prosecutors engineered this exact plea agreement alongside the Fletcher family, who expressly communicated their desire for finality over the grueling uncertainty of a capital murder trial. By taking the deal, Abston permanently forfeited all his future appeal rights. District Attorney Steve Mulroy stood in open court, reading the family's direct statement to Abston. They possessed zero understanding of what life events forged him into a killer, noting nothing excuses or explains his actions. They told him he shattered their world irreparably, clarifying that Eliza did absolutely nothing to warrant this fate. The family emphasized she would have immediately helped anyone in need, Abston offered zero public reaction. Defense counsel told reporters his client took the plea simply because dying in prison beat facing an executioner. He will perish behind bars. The consecutive sentences legally guarantee he will never walk free under any loophole. But how does a city heal? Every year since 2022, Memphis athletes converge before dawn on her abduction anniversary and run her favorite route. They pound the pavement to finish her exact miles. Relatives constantly share how she anchored those around her, noting her genuinely radiant smile, and repeating she always stepped up first. People do not assign those descriptions to abstract symbols. Those words belong to a human you actually knew, missed terribly, and simply cannot forget. But what happens when the threat waits closer to home? Number 10 brings us to Byron Lewis Black. On her final night alive, Angela Clay clocked out of her long Sunday shift at Vanderbilt University Medical Center. The lab technician walked outside, only to find her boyfriend idling in the parking lot, offering a ride home. The clock read roughly 10 o'clock at night on March 27, 1988. Witnesses confirmed Angela never anticipated his arrival. Everyone knew the volatile dynamic between Angela Clay and Byron Lewis Black severely lacked peace. She slid into the passenger seat unaware that neither she nor her daughters would ever make it out of the darkness. Byron Lewis Black entered the world on March 23, 1956, growing up in Nashville. He lacked foundational stability during his childhood, forging an adult rap sheet packed with a distinct, undeniable pattern of violent volatility. His romance with Angela mirrored those exact toxic traits right from the start. Relatives later told detectives that Byron defined the couple's daily reality through relentless jealousy and obsessive control tactics. He clamped down, while she constantly fought for baseline independence. Angela also protected two young daughters. Lethal injections stop hearts, but hidden technology threatened to shock one inmate back from the dead indefinitely. Earlier, 9-year-old LaToya and 6-year-old Lakeisha lived apart from their father, Benny Clay, following a separation. Their mother was 35 years old and held down a secure position at one of Nashville's top-tier medical facilities. Close friends noticed a shift, though. She secretly weighed getting back together with her estranged husband. Byron Black found out, and family members confirmed he made his fury perfectly clear. He left zero ambiguity, telling people flat out he would not allow it. Investigators documented his specific threat to pull a Sterling Gray, referencing a notorious local case where a man slaughtered a woman attempting to leave him. Was he just bluffing? Black had already proven his threats carried deadly weight. He never bluffed. In December 1986, roughly 15 months before the murders, he confronted Benny Clay and shot him in the shoulder. Benny survived. A jury convicted Black of a felony, slapping him with a 2-year sentence at the Metro Workhouse. This Nashville jail offered work release privileges, allowing him to walk free on weekends. He used one of those exact weekend furloughs the night he grabbed Angela from Vanderbilt. The clock ticked into the early morning hours of March 28, 1988. Inside the Clay family apartment at 11,001 Wade Avenue in South Nashville, Byron Black shot Angela Clay once in the head in bed. She died within minutes. He also shot 9-year-old LaToya in the master bedroom. Officers later found 6-year-old Lakeisha gunned down in another section of the apartment. All three died from a firearm. Detectives found zero signs of forced entry, but they knew Black had stood inside that home before. Court records showed he previously kicked the front door in during a dispute, and investigators easily proved his presence that night. How did he cover his tracks? He simply returned to the workhouse after his furlough. His alibi crumbled fast. The next day, a neighbor discovered the bodies, triggering an investigation moving with blistering speed and purpose. Foodstantial evidence against Black mounted from the very start. 3 people from his workplace and neighborhood eventually testified in court, swearing he made explicit prior threats to kill Angela and her daughters. Look at the pattern: the history of domestic violence, the prior shooting of Benny Clay, questions surrounding a life insurance policy, and his precise furlough timeline meant everything pointed in one direction. On March 28, 1989, exactly 1 year after the murders, a Davidson County jury convicted Byron Lewis Black on all 3 counts of first-degree murder. Yet, the jury specifically sentenced him to death for murdering 6-year-old Leisha Clay, the youngest victim. They added 2 consecutive life sentences for the murders of Angela and LaToya. Did he break? Black maintained his absolute innocence from his arrest through every single hearing, appeal, and courtroom appearance over the next 36 years. He never gave up. What followed became one of the longest legal journeys in Tennessee death row history. He filed appeals and post-conviction petitions throughout the 1990s and 2000s, facing constant rejection, while attorneys argued ineffective counsel and challenged jury instructions. They even raised constitutional questions regarding proportionality. The courts closed every avenue. Then, in 2020, a new, far more consequential argument emerged. Black's defense team argued he suffered an intellectual disability, a condition that categorically bars execution under the 2002 Supreme Court ruling in Atkins versus Virginia. Multiple psychologists rushed in to evaluate him. Results were heavily disputed. In 2022, Nashville District Attorney Glenn Funk filed a petition conceding Black was intellectually disabled, demanding his removal from death row. This marked an extraordinary and nearly unprecedented move for a prosecutor. But would the courts agree? They ultimately rejected the concession, ruling it legally unbound. The courts stood firm, and Black remained rotting on death row. By 2025, Black hit 69 years old. Court filings described a frail, wheelchair-bound man suffering from dementia, severe brain damage, kidney disease, and congestive heart failure. Doctors had implanted an internal cardioverter defibrillator into his chest. This device detects dangerous heart rhythms and delivers an electric shock to restore normal function. His attorneys argued this created a uniquely serious risk, as lethal injection drugs inevitably stopped his heart. The defibrillator would detect the cardiac event and attempt to shock him back to life, potentially multiple times. This endless loop creates a prolonged, torturous death, directly violating the Eighth Amendment's prohibition on cruel and unusual punishment. A Davidson County Chancery Court judge agreed with that specific argument, ruling in July 2025 that the state must deactivate the device before proceeding. But the Tennessee Attorney General's office immediately appealed to the state Supreme Court, which ruthlessly reversed the ruling. A Nashville hospital, briefly identified as a potential location for deactivating the device, issued a statement clarifying it never agreed to participate and held no role in state executions. Medical experts call it chemical drowning, yet the United States Supreme Court declined intervening. Governor Bill Lee swiftly denied his clemency. The state cleared the execution to proceed. A smooth ride? Hardly. On August 5, 2025, inside Nashville's Riverbend Maximum Security Institution, guards pulled the execution chamber curtain at exactly 10:30 that morning. They strapped Byron Lewis Black to the gurney, under a stark white sheet. Tennessee's new single-drug lethal injection protocol, pure pentobarbital, began flowing into him. 7 media representatives watched the lethal process unfold, detailing the sequence in nearly identical reports. Suddenly, Black began gasping loudly for air. A simple mechanical glitch? No. He repeatedly groaned, turning toward his spiritual advisor inside the chamber, and shouted loud enough for every witness to hear clearly, "This is hurting so bad." He endured this severe distress for several grueling minutes before finally losing consciousness. Officials recorded his time of death at 10:43 that morning. He gave no final statement. When asked for his last words, he offered only, "No, sir." He said nothing else before the pain forced out his actual final words. The hidden cause? The autopsy. Released September 10, 2025, the report exposed clear evidence of pulmonary edema, rapid lung fluid buildup that medical experts explicitly describe as inducing sheer panic, absolute suffocation, and sensations of drowning. A broad national study examining lethal injection autopsies documented this exact same traumatic finding in roughly 3/4 of cases, forcing experts and death penalty opponents to declare these agonizing failures cannot remain theoretically dismissed. Who remembers the victims? We do. Angela Clay's sister, Lynette Bell, stepped squarely in front of Riverbend's news cameras right after the execution. Addressing the public, she expressed deep gratitude, feeling incredibly thankful to finally witness this day. She harbored absolutely zero pity for Byron Black. Want to know why? Because across 37 long years, he stayed silent. Not in any courtroom, not inside any letter, and certainly not during his final statement did he ever apologize or admit his horrific actions. He never once spoke LaToya, LaKeisha, or Angela's names to express remorse. Like, we never got an apology, Bell told the gathered crowd. He simply refused. And just like that, the Clay family watched their excruciating 37-year wait for a formal conclusion definitively end. Angela Clay was 35. LaToya was 9. Lakeisha was 6. The exact man who had previously threatened their lives slaughtered them inside their home, right in their beds after the justice system released him back onto the streets on a weekend pass. Their 3 names must remain anchored at the absolute center of this story, not because the intense legal debates surrounding Byron Black's execution lacked valid merit, but because, no matter what argument surrounds the state's method of justice, we ultimately sought justice only for them.